I'm Remy Mansfield. I'm a program manager here on Adobe's Worldwide Education Programs team. I'll be your host today for our professional development online webinar series. So, welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us. Today, we kick off a three-part series on CTE, Career Technical Education. We are joined by two experts today in this field, whom I will introduce. They will provide us with an overview of how we connect creativity, K-12, colleges, and industry to build career pathways that matter. We will be hearing from them about their own experiences, and also today's uh, first part in the three-part series is about an overview of what CT is. So today our expert panel is made up of Sean Gloomis, Angela Allison, and Rena Walsinger, who couldn't join us today, but will be a big part of this three-part series moving forward. A little short introduction on these three warrants it before I hand over the reins for them to take control and move forward with the presentation. Sean Gloomis is a K-14 Career Pathways statewide technical assistance provider for Northern California. He's also an esteemed Adobe education leader on the Education Exchange and within our community of education leaders. Angela Allison is a K-14 Career Pathways statewide technical assistance provider as well, and she is for the Southern California area. Rena Walsinger, who can't join us today but will be joining us in a future session, is statewide data tools technical assistance provider for California. So welcome, Sean and Angela. Thank you for joining us this morning, this evening, today on our webinar for kicking off one part of our three-part series on CTE. So with that said, I will hand over the reins to you and feel free to take it forward with your presentation. Hey, Sean, this is Remy. I see you getting set up here with the screen. Just want to check in to see that your audio is working okay. Don't hear anything on our side, so it might be a muting issue. And for those of you joining us as attendees, while we take this time just to get our presentation up, Sean and Angela to get organized, please do introduce yourself. Let us know both where you're tuning in from today and also where you teach and at what level.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Sorry, Remy.
Loud.
Can you? Okay. So sorry about that. I think it was a little microphone snafu on my end of the world here. So today, just to give you a quick overview, once again, my name is Sean Gloomis and Angela Allison is here. I'll let her say hello.
Good morning, everyone. At least it's morning for us in California. Good morning and good afternoon to those other time zones.
So a little bit more about our background. Remy was kind enough to give our short bio there. We have a very long title in the jobs that both of us do here in the state of California. So we are the K through 14 career pathway statewide technical assistance providers under the Doing What Matters for the Jobs and Economy program. And so it's a statewide program that's run out of the California Community College Chancellor's Office. And we both come from a community college background. I was a digital media instructor at Golden West College for almost 16 years and taught Photoshop, Illustrator, all the other things. And I'm an Adobe education leader as well. And I'll let Angela give a little bit about her background.
Yeah, so Again, my name's Angela Allison, and before doing this work as a technical assistance provider, I was actually the dean at Golden West College, Huntington Beach, California, overseeing career and technical education and business. And prior to that, I'd been a director of special grants and projects, overseeing both local, state, and federal grants implementation and monitoring, and have a long history the student services side of the house as well.
And so we moved on to this, basically connecting the dots, and that's one of the reasons we named this first webinar, connecting the dots with ICT digital media. And our job is to help make those connections throughout the state of California, not just in digital media, but we actually have 11 different sectors that we work in. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is the importance of career technical education, especially here in the United States and in California. There's been a real pendulum shift from academic funding to CTE funding. And this series is going to highlight a lot of the changes that have happened here in the United States, but how it can be applied worldwide as well, because I know we have people from Canada and other places. So most of this stuff works very well in the classroom, or it may work well with your administrators to argue why CT is so important and why it's important for the jobs and economy. So with that said, we'll get going here. And we are going to try to stay away from acronyms. We live in a world of acronyms. So we're TAPS, Technical Assistance Providers. We have a million different acronyms here in California for all of our education and industry as well. And sadly, they don't match up with everyone else in the world and even our other states here in the United States. So Remy, if we go off on one of our tangents in throwing out a ton of acronyms, please speak up and stop us. And but we're usually pretty careful about that when we're talking outside of our group here in California. And my background too, like I said, I was an instructor, but I come from industry as well. And Angela comes from the administrative and student services side. So we can usually answer any questions across the board, especially on the education side, or we can work off each other as well and come up with a solution usually to something. And we do have a lot of contacts out there, and we'll save answering the questions till the end. So if you have any very specific questions, we're more than happy to help. And I always say if we don't know, we can usually find out for you as well. So we're a resource across the board, and we're more than happy to help anyone out that needs the help. So I'll get going here with our slate. And if you're not using Adobe Slate yet, I love it. I'm not a PowerPoint person. I'm like anti-PowerPoint. I do presentations, and this is about as far as I go. This is our general overview, and it's to keep us on track as well. So there are some links in here, and we can give you more information down the road too. So if you like the PowerPoints with tons of information, these are not them. So we already talked about us. There's a picture of me, say hi, there I am at Comic-Con. Well, one of the things that I've done in my career the last 20 some odd years is I am a letterer. And if you go on the Adobe edX, I actually did a series on comic book lettering and comic book production for the classroom. I think it's about a 40-minute how-to on how to do comic book covers. And if you do a Google search, or not Google search, but search in the Adobe edX, or if you look up my name, you'll probably find it. It's great for, I know we had someone in the high school who teaches down in Louisiana there. It's great for your high school digital media classes. You end up doing an entire project. And there is Angela. And Rena sends her regrets, but she is on an airplane right now. We get sent all over the state, and she got called up and had to leave. So she regrets that she can't be here. But our next webinar, which we'll talk about towards the end here, which is on certification, third-party industry recognized certification. It's something we rolled out in California, and she's at the national level as well, in DC as well as state of California on credentialing. So one of the questions that comes up is, what does ICT mean? And in California, our sector for digital media arts, for graphic design, for video game production, all of that falls under ICT digital media. And ICT isn't a term that's used in the United States that much. It is used around the world. The United Nations coined the term. California is one of the very first states that actually used it. But ICT stands for Information and Communication Technologies. And this is the definition that's out there online, but it's a diverse set of technological tools and resources used to communicate and to create, disseminate, store, and manage information. Computer, internet, broadcast technology, radio and television, graphic design, digital media kind of falls into this. So anything that's digital falls under this monkier that's out there. And we will refer to it as ICT digital media a lot because that's just what we use in California. Other states, they have broken it up into two different sectors and confuse it too much. But even in California, our K through 12s call it arts, media, and entertainment. It's not ICT. So, but because we were looking at a worldwide audience, I wanted to use a term that is used primarily everywhere else except for here. It's kind of like the metric system. We're the only ones that really don't use it. So, hand this over to Angela to talk a little bit about career technical education and why it's so important, especially in education right now.
Yeah, so in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a pendulum shift, as Sean alluded to earlier, where we are facing what they call middle skill jobs. So they're the jobs that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree, but they're more so for students that want short-term training. They want to get 2-year degrees, very much an applied skill set. And so CTE is very, very general. It captures those programs. And one of the interesting things is that for a very long time, the answer to the educational solution has always been get a 4-year degree. We grew up hearing we needed a 4-year degree. We wanted to succeed in the world. Well, the new evidence and data is showing us that that's leaving us with a huge gap in skilled workers across the board in those jobs that don't require 4-year degrees. So the other important piece that we've gone away from is it used to be when a student was in high school, you were on either the college track or you were on the vocational education track. We are no longer in that world. It is now, instead of saying or, we are making a very intentional practice of saying it is career and technical education. It's career and college, because at the end, no matter whether you're in college for a particular set of skills and a very short-term training to get credentials, to get a certificate, or if you want to get all the way up to a PhD, the end game is the career. So now we're working on multiple what we call on-ramps, so places where students can enter our educational system to get this training, and we're looking at multiple off-ramps because sometimes people come in and get just enough training to get a better job that actually gives them a sustainable living wage. So as we're building this, we like to talk about we're building the plane as we're flying it, rather than building the plane and then flying it. As we're doing this, we really have to be very intentional about no longer delineating between the career and technical education and the academic house, because quite honestly, career and technical education is very much academic. And so now we're trying to shift the mindset of calling it general education, which are your philosophies, your maths, your sciences, and everything else in some way, shape, or form breaks the silo into career and technical education. So, and in the last 5 years, both on the federal and on the state level, there has been billions of dollars poured into retraining displaced workers to training the middle skills. Again, that's the general term that you hear across the nation, middle skills workers, and training students for the impending employment we're facing with people that are now retiring, they're aging out of their workforce. And for instance, in a lot of the applied sciences like heating, ventilation, air conditioning, the majority of those people are going to retire within the next 10 years, and we have a like a 30-year gap of trained individuals. So if you like air conditioning, we're going to be facing a shortage of those skilled workers. But that's kind of getting a little bit off the topic. But that's really what we're doing is we're working on this wide variety of technical skills, which include the arts, and it includes the Adobe skill sets that many of you have and are experts at. And it actually, what's really unique and what we really love about the digital ICT and digital media sector, as we call them, is while it has its own standalone, it actually touches every industry, even down into the agriculture and the manufacturing. There is no one sector that is not affected by the brilliance of the work that's done behind the programs that you use in ICT and digital media.
And just to kind of go back to our worker shortage is the best way to put it, and especially here in the United States. California did the Task Force on Workforce. It's our report that came out, and it's a huge report and recommendations. We're looking at about, over the next 10 years, we're going to be short 1 million workers in the state of California. It's not that we don't have the population. More and more people come to California. It's the skill sets that are needed. Like Angela said, we're looking at jobs in agriculture. Welding is a very good example. Here in the Central Valley of California, we feed pretty much the world. And the issue is we don't have enough people who are able to go out and fix the equipment, do the welding, the engineers, those types of jobs, because we put such emphasis on the general ed, get your 4-year degree. We have a skills gap that's massive. So that's really part of our bigger picture job, is to make sure all these things are happening. And it's not just happening here in California, it's happening across the United States. My guess, Canada's also got the same issues. And we're hurting the economies of other countries because we're pulling their skilled workers as well. Mexico, Canada are two good examples. Here in California, we're bringing workers who have those skill sets into California to fill those jobs from all over the world. And what we need to do, and what we're here, part of our job in the end, is the doing what matters for jobs and economy. This is the website that's up there right now. I really suggest taking a look. There is a ton of information on here, lots of data, where things are going, and it paints a pretty good picture of the issues that are going on and where we're moving forward as well. And this link is in the slate as well, but just do a Google search, it'll pop up first. So getting back to the creative side, and one of the things that's in our title, Career Pathways. And so what is a pathway? This is a fairly difficult question to answer. And not so much that it's hard in its context, it's the definition itself is so wide and varied across the world. Even here in California, you could go from school district to school district, and we have a different definition. In a couple of our future webinars, we're going to talk about WIOA, which is the WIOA. It's a federal act that the United States has done. And within that, they're really trying to define what a career pathway is and how it's structured. It's going to become our definition across the United States. And it's already gone into effect. I'm going to save that for the other one. But it's one of those acronyms that if you have time, go do a Google search for WIOA. And especially if you're here in the United States, do a little bit of reading on it. It will affect you if you're in any of the career technical education areas. But like I said, we're bringing in an expert actually from Washington, D.C., from a group called CLASP. That will be our third webinar, and it's about how WIOA affects your program. And we'll go through that in a lot more detail. But getting back to the pathway here, so there's a lot of different definitions for what a career pathway is and should look like in education. I'm just going to use the Department of Labor. That's the United States Department of Labor's definition. And this is not the end-all definition either, but it at least gives you an idea of what we're talking about. But it's a series of connected education and training strategies and the support services that enable individuals to secure industry-relevant certification and obtain employment within an occupation area, and to advance to higher levels of future education and employment in that area. And there's a couple really key words in there. One of them is certification. More and more you're going to hear about here in the United States, especially California, everyone, it goes back to that WIOA, but third party industry recognized certifications. That is going to be our second webinar. We're going to go into a lot more detail on how we rolled out the Adobe Certified Associate exams to match up to this and to be part of our system. But it really comes down to building a roadmap, drawing up a roadmap for people to follow to get jobs. In the end, we're here to make sure people work. So how do we get those people to work? And this is one of our favorite diagrams on pathways and programs of study is what they're sometimes called as well. And if you notice, there's two sides of this. We have a top and a bottom because we do have an aging population. Our baby boomers and Gen X and those generations, they are the ones going back to school to be retrained. Angela brought that up a little bit earlier. So our job is not only to get the 18-year-olds into the system, but also to be there to retrain everyone to get different jobs. You know, the jobs we have now probably won't exist in 10 years. They are going to evolve. They're going to turn into other things. But it's those skill sets that are needed, and also to being able to train these people to be flexible and to get that education that they need to get out. So I don't want to go through this in a ton of detail, but you can see at the top, this is pretty much that 18-year-old from secondary to post-secondary. We have what we call stackable credentials. And in California and actually nationwide, we're seeing this more and more, where it could be a third-party industry recognized credential like the Adobe Certified Associate, the Microsoft Office exams. If we're talking about welding, there's the AWS, which is the welding certificate. So we have all these certifications that are industry recognized. Most schools, and I'm going to say most here, I'm going to just kind of throw a blanket out, have some type of credentialing or certification programs. We're looking more and more at stackables because it breaks up into smaller bite-sized groupings of courses that can be put together over time. Because for those of you who are educators, you know this as well as us, no one ever follows the plan. You have a kid in middle school in the ninth grade who decides they want to be a graphic designer. By the time they're in 12th grade, they may have taken some courses, but now they have decided they want to be a welder. And then they transfer into college and life happens and they bounce in and out. It takes them, they're the 8-year senior and it takes them a long time to go through. But when they're all done, they have a business degree. And so building pathways that have on and off ramps is very important, and building programs as well. Because you can see down at the bottom, we have the adult career pathways. It's on and off. They come in to get their skilled jobs. They go back to get their semi-skilled. The middle level is what we were talking about earlier. This group right here is where we're seeing a shortage. And they continually come and go. And I am talking about community colleges here. So in the United States, pretty much across the board, and I believe Canada is the same way, we have our 4-year universities that issue bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs. We have a middle group of schools called community colleges. Sometimes they're called trade schools in other parts of the world. And they fill in that gap between high schools to the 4 years. So if you had a high school student coming in, they come in as to community college. They do 2 years, their first 2 years, their freshman and their sophomore year, and then they transfer to a 4-year school. So a good example of that would be they came to the school that both me and Angela taught at, Golden West College. They do their 2 years there, and then they would transfer to a UCLA or a USC to get their bachelor's degree. But with career technical education, and to be very honest, with our digital media group, a lot of people would only come to the 2-year and then go to work. And so that's what this model shows here, is that in and out that happens throughout someone's lifetime with their technical training. They may only come back for 1 or 2 classes because they need to learn web design, or they need to learn Photoshop, or they need to learn a specific skill like a Microsoft Office skill. And so we're that in between for everyone. But we're an important part of the CTE programs, because in some cases, automotive is a very good example. There's not a lot of bachelor's degrees in the United States for automotive repair. It's career technical education, certifications, certificates issued by the schools, and Associate of Art degrees. Sorry, I might have said AA earlier. Those are called Associate of Art degrees. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of our system and the way we look at it as well. And it's a lot of things happening all together, but it really is, when we strip it all away, we're trying to build and write roadmaps for people to follow, best practices, and allowing them to come and go as they need to as well, based on their own financial, their job. Recessions hit, and these are the reasons these programs are here: is people are unemployed, they lose their jobs, they come back to work. So let's talk a little bit about creativity. Did you want to add anything, Angela? Sorry, I've been doing all the talking here.
No, that's fine. Actually, the only thing that I wanted to jump back and add is that, in looking at that diagram where it shows the entry points where it says secondary to post-secondary, what's really nice about that is now we actually are starting to do alignment with our K-12 systems with the high school students, where high school students are able to start their pathways, in a high school course. But as we build these effectively, a student can take, some units in high school and easily and seamlessly transition to the local community college or the community college that has the program that they want to complete in. Because ultimately, what we're really trying to do is produce top quality employee for the industry. Because one of the things that we are recognizing is, across the board, we've focused so heavily on the partnerships to our K-12 system, to our adult education system, to our community colleges and our 4 years. We've left industry off of the table. And one of the nice things is we have the ability here to get students, from the first time that they ever take a class to actually have a relevant position in the industry that they're seeking much sooner, if people actually, take the sequenced set of courses in a career pathway.
All right, so sorry about the fire hose amount of information here, but now when we really start talking about the digital media side and how we implemented things and how we contextualized digital media as well. Angela a little bit earlier talked about ICT digital media touches every single industry in the world. And I like to tell my students, I go, well, no one reads the newspaper anymore, but the book that you picked up, the website that you're on, the phone that you're on, all these things have some type of digital media or ICT component. Angela brought up earlier with agriculture. One of the things that's happening in California is the drone industry in agriculture and using the cameras. And we were actually at one of our industry partners, and they told us about their newer large scale drones. What they're doing up in our Central Valley is they're using them to monitor their cattle, and they fly prescribed routes over the cattle, and they have infrared sensors and gas sensors attached to them. They can actually pick out the sick cattle using using the drone, and then using the RFIDs that are attached to the cattle, they can actually figure out where they are and then pull them out and do what they need to do instead of having people out there. I know in the Midwest here in the United States, they're doing it on a much grander scale too. That's how they monitor their crops, is using technology like that. And that technology, there's user interface design. So if you're using an iPad to fly it, someone's got to design all that user interface. John Deere is one of the large manufacturers of tractors and heavy equipment here in the United States. They're the big green tractors. You've probably seen them at some point. Those tractors aren't run by people anymore. There's a human sitting in them, but it's an interface. It's a touchscreen interface using a satellite GPS system to go through and either cut the crops or plow and do those types of things. Well, all that technology, someone needs to create that. Someone needs to maintain it as well. And I think what gets lost, especially for the digital media people here, is that entire industry may not be the fancy in your face entertainment side of the industry, like Hollywood and television that we see, but there is a ton of money to be made for people who can do good user interface design, UX design for that human interaction between the equipment as well. So it's that contextualization across sectors and programs that is so critical to make sure that career technical education. I know we said a little bit earlier, it's and not or with our academic and career tech, but we're still in that education phase with our administrators and all of our instructors. So we as instructors and we as people in the career technical education side, and especially the digital media and creative sides, need to be able to walk into those classrooms and partner with those other instructors and partner with those sectors to show the importance of what we do on the creative side and how important it is to intertwine with what they're doing. And so a good example of this would be, I love Adobe Slate. There's also Adobe Voice out there, and they're both free programs that are available on the mobile side, also on the, like with Slate and Voice, you can do it on the web. But one of the things that I had an instructor up in San Francisco who was an English instructor. She came to one of our workshops a while back, and we talked about, Adobe Voice and Slate. And she ended up using Voice as her final and midterm platform for her English class. So instead of them just writing a term paper, they actually did an multimedia presentation. So it's instructors as educators looking for funding sources. All of that is STEM or STEAM is another big one as well. So STEM is the science, technology, engineering, and math. Here in the United States, there is a huge push right now for STEM. STEAM is adding the arts into that. So science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Sorry about all the acronyms. But it's taking what we use in the creative side and infusing it. And the other side of that coin too is when I worked at Golden West, our Photoshop class, we would have astronomers in there because they need to use Photoshop, and they had to take that creative side and apply it to their satellite photos. We actually had a scientist from JPL who lived in our area who was teaching our Photoshop class because he did the long exposures for the stars and those types of things. We had nursing students in our program because they use it for their imaging, for X-rays and things like that. And another, especially since we have kind of a worldwide audience here, one of our sectors here in California is called global trade, and that's global trade and logistics. That is a massive industry, and ICT digital media really crosses over into that industry and touches it everywhere. From working on the docks, that's probably the most visible of the global trade jobs out there. If any of you have a port near you or a shipping center or a logistics center, all that stuff that has to be moved around. But I do know some people are longshoremen. They're the workers down the docks. They are now using basically tablets to do everything. There's customized interfaces that they use to track all the shipping. And so the creative side to that as well. Another huge area that is exploding, especially here in California, but across the world, is biotechnology. And we're lucky because here in California, we have the San Diego area, which is the home of biotech, San Francisco and Los Angeles. But North Carolina's got it, the Duke area, and all around the world. And what they're looking for and what we're hearing from the industry is it's great that the scientists have all the technical background and that they're good with the numbers and they're good with the science. But what's lacking is the creativity and using and leveraging that creativity in those sciences and elsewhere. And so here in California, at one of the things that I helped write was our biotech illustration program at Golden West College. And getting kind of down to the specifics on it, it was a program to introduce our graphic designers and our digital media people into the biotech industry and taking their creative skill sets and applying it to that industry. So it was a very specific career pathway bridge that we went out because we saw the need for it. The industry needed more creative people. They needed that infusion of creativity into the industry. And so we built a pathway that addressed that need.
The other element that we were able to do along that same line is they actually part of the importance of what's going on in CTE actually getting other education divisions to recognize how you do touch all of these different. So we actually partnered our science department. We took an anatomy instructor who was teaching the general populations that were coming through the college, taking just regular anatomy that would transfer on to the four-year institutions of, for people that wanted to be exercise physiologists and whatnot. And she works with one of the design instructors to contextualize. That's a really important word that's going around right now in education, is to contextualize. Contextualization in our world means that we take a content area and we basically modify how we're delivering the education to meet the needs of the students that are in the course. So we took the content of anatomy and paired it with the content of the design, so that when the students sat in this special class that they were in the process, they're still in the process of writing and finishing up it right now, but that a student who could actually sit down and not only know the actual true anatomy content, but was then able to then draw it, because medical device design is a huge industry that they're struggling around the country to have people to fill those jobs. But when they contextualize the knowledge of anatomy with the talent and the skill set of the designers, it produces a whole new realm for people to understand how we no longer live in silos of education. So that's again just one example of how we are contextualizing across sectors, across divisions, from general education to career and technical education. And you're going to see more and more of that as we build out our career pathways, because again, there's no longer the division between people going through the career and technical, vocational, or tech school kind of training, and those going to the four-year kind of training. They are now in the same classrooms, in the same seats, learning the same content. They're just learning it specific to some industries.
And another good example of that would be a math class for automotive. So if you have an automotive program, and instead of them taking a standard Math 100, a math class is created for the auto industry. So it'd be like math for auto, or math for graphic design, or math for whatever, or English for automotive. Dealing with a much different skill set in English. Yeah. One of the ones that here in California that's done very well and it's been around the longest is math for nursing. And so we have a lot of nursing programs, and they have very specialized math, dealing with drug dosages and things like that. So they contextualize the math that's used in the field in the classroom. And the students, and that actually opens up a lot of general ed. It addresses a lot of issues with math and English here in the United States. Our students test low coming in. And when it's contextualized, they do much better because they're able to take their own experience and go, oh, that's why I need that math. It's that question that gets asked in math classes. Well, why do I need this algebra? Well, when they're in a math for nursing program, it's very contextualized down to, what they're doing with the patient. And it's much easier to do that. When I used to teach Adobe InDesign for a number of years, and we do a lot of math in layout, and it's all fractions or decimals. It's 0.25, 0.125, inches, metric, whatever it may be. And I always found it interesting was when we talked about math and we were doing it in Adobe InDesign, everyone got it in the classroom. But if I wrote it on the board and said, okay, we need to divide or we need to add, it just went out the window. And everyone's like, I don't get it. I need my calculator. And eventually, for those of you who are designers, all those standards, they just become second nature to us as well. And so it's taking that type of learning and rolling it into something that can be used in a CTE program. So we want to talk about our 5-step outreach program. And this is much more specific than what we've been talking about up to this point. Angela and I, as well as Rena Wolzinger and some of our, actually Angela, we have another Angela that's part of our team. She'll be in the second workshop here that we're doing about the certifications. but her name's Angela Gomez Holbrook. So, as a department at Golden West College, we were a very large one for digital arts and digital media. At our peak, we had about 850 students in about 30 classes. We had 4 large classrooms as well, 120 max, give or take a few. And so we were one of the largest ones in Southern California, along with Pasadena City College and Santa Monica City College. And we were a large feeder school to some of the premier art schools here in the Los Angeles area. Art Center School of Art and Design up in Pasadena, Arts, which is the animation school up in Valencia, and Otis and Laguna. So we were a large feeder, but our population is changing, especially here in California, especially here in Southern California. I live in the Orange County area, and our schools were built for the baby boomer generation. So we have a lot of elementary, middle school, and high schools that were built that either are being closed down, sold off because we don't have that younger population around here. And that affects us as well. At the community college level, if we don't have as many high school kids graduating, that means we're not getting kids into our programs. And so, to address that issue and to be proactive about it, we came up with a 5-step outreach program. And this was specific to our digital arts and media. I wrote this up, though, to keep it general because you can apply this to any program. I don't care if it's an English program, I don't care if it's an automotive program. These steps can be applied at a university level, at a K through 12 level. It's really about marketing and having a roadmap and a plan to execute. Now, there's a lot more detail that goes into this, and we can probably spend the next 3 hours going over how did we fund it, what monies did we use, who were all the personnel involved, what were the logistics involved. But we're going to, just for sake of time and to keep it as general and useful as possible across the world, we're just going to kind of keep it as these basic steps. But our first step was you need to connect with your partner schools, or sometimes they're your feeder schools. There's a lot of different terms for it. The school that we were at Golden West College in Huntington Beach, we had roughly 9 high schools that fed into our program that were within about a 15-mile radius of us. One of our other issues is we have 9 community colleges within about a 30-mile radius of Golden West College. We had roughly 12,000 students at our campus. One of our sister schools, which is about 8 miles away, had about 30,000 students, and they were a much larger school. And you start adding it up, we have, and I don't think we said this before, but just to put it into context, what we're talking about here, the California Community College system is the largest higher ed system in, I think, the world. We have 2.3 million students in our system in 113 colleges. So we have 113 campuses just within the state of California that are community colleges with over 2 million students enrolled in it. That does not include the CSU, the California State University system, or the UC, the University of California. And we actually have 4 completely separate systems when you add what we call the California Department of Education, or the K through 12s. So sometimes when we talk about this in other parts of the world or even other parts of the country, we're talking kind of on a massive scale here. And what happens, though, getting back to what I was talking about with those 9 colleges, we all compete for the same people, and we overlap in our regions. So as a department, we looked at our region and said, okay, all 9 schools in Orange County also have a digital media arts program. So we're all competing with that. And digital media arts in Orange County, and for those of you who don't know what Orange County is, it's just south of Los Angeles, and Disneyland's here. So I live like 10 minutes from Disneyland, so I get the fireworks every night. But and so we're a very large county. We have a large population, and then we have Los Angeles right north of us as well, Los Angeles County. And total, just between the two of us, it's 23 million people. Or no, sorry, the schools.
27.
Sorry, we have 27 schools just in those 2 regions.
2-year schools.
Yeah, 2-year schools. We're not talking about 4-year here either, and we're not even talking about high school. So we're dealing with a lot of competition, is what I'm trying to paint the picture here. So knowing that and sitting down and saying, okay, what can we do to become the trusted school? And that was really my driving factor when we put this together was we needed to gain the trust of our K through 12 partners and be the leader in our area. We can have the greatest program in the world, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. We need butts and seats, is what we call it. We need warm bodies in those classes. And we don't want just anybody. We do want students that are going to succeed. So that goes back to the career pathways. And this is a major component of how we built the career pathway. So finding your partner schools. If you're at the college level, that means going back down to your K through 12s. If it's the K through 12s, it means going up to the colleges and reaching out. You would be surprised, especially your high school teachers out there, how much influence you have with us. If you walk in and say, we need this, we want this, and you get those parents to push for it, our administrators at the higher education level will take notice. They will probably not take notice unless you're the squeaky wheel, though. And I always say this, you have to advocate for your students and you have to advocate for your programs. If you're a student, you have to advocate for yourself as well. We're a massive system, and yes, counselors are great people, but our ratio is like one counselor to 900 students in our system. So there's not a lot of personal stuff going on there. And it's the same thing with these schools. For every high school, we've got one high school teacher teaching digital media arts or in the creative areas. Now you've got 9 colleges as well that those students might go to. But getting out there, advocating, and really building the trust. And so step one is connecting with your partner schools. What we did is we sent out our college level instructors to the classroom and we had them do projects with the students. The high school teachers love it because they get a day off. They don't have to teach that day. And the college level instructor starts building that relationship not only with the teacher, but with the students. I did this personally with 3 high schools, and they still ask me to come out, and I still do it even though I'm not really teaching anymore. But those students trusted me. And this is a long term investment as well. We didn't see returns on some of this for over a year because those students are still in 11th grade, 12th grade. They're not coming to us right away. So getting out there, building projects, it's great to do real simple ones. A little bit earlier, I talked about my Adobe edX, my comic book one for the cover. It's what I do when I go out to high schools. It's about a 40-minute, everyone builds in Photoshop, they do something, and then I give them feedback and give them the critiques and all of that. And it's a great project for the high school teacher to then continue to use. And the picture here actually that comes up, you can see it's for your Batman fans, it's Robin. This is actually a project that I do, and if you go to my website, and I'll have the link up here, but it is my last name, gloomis.com. I have everything up there for it. I have them draw comic book covers. So this is a 3rd grade class that did this, and I spend time even at that level, in the K through 6 level, to get them interested and started. So we try to cover as much of the K through 12 as we possibly can, but the high school is our first, I don't want to say super priority, but it is the priority because that's where our feeders are going in. So step one is getting out into those schools, getting your personnel, your teachers, and your administrators as well. Get them out there. Angela was our dean. She used to come out to our high schools. And so the administrators at the high school level see our administrators, our instructors. If you can bring your students as well, if they allow it, have them come out. It's a great interaction with your college level students to work with the high school people as well. But that's sometimes it's based on if they can do it and if the schools allow. But it's an idea to throw out there. Did you have anything to add?
Well, I think that just the main point is that project-based learning, as we all know, is really where the actual learning happens. When we send counselors to high schools and all they do is they talk about what is happening, the reason why this model was much more successful than just going out and making a presentation to a class and then leaving went into the project-based learning. The students actually engaging in the activity and knowing that there's a sequence of that it's not just a one touch and they'll never see you again model. And again, the students have something that they've actually created. And for a lot of them, they look at it as with a college, so they start to think that college can be a reality. It's no longer I may not college bound, because you have these kids with some confidence issues at times. But when they get to interact with an instructor in a very positive and encouraging and project based learning environment, it really changes the landscape of the student's destiny, I think.
And also, too, going back to contextualization, it doesn't have to be the art department. It doesn't have to be the digital arts class. It could be any course at the high school. Just getting them out there, getting your instructors out there onto those campuses and building that trust factor. You become that campus where they ship all the kids to because they trust you, they know you. And it kind of goes back to what Angela said. Yes, we can send outreach counselors and all that, but it's just another talking head. It's the hands on, which gets us to step two. So, step one is get out into the classroom, get into those schools. The next step is working with those classes and our industry. If you notice, industry comes into this very like step two. We have to have industry as part of our partnership. And to be very honest, we haven't done a very good job at that. I don't think really anywhere across the country. There's a lot of movement happening, but it's very fractured, or it's done very well in one specific area, but it's not done well across the board. And so we brought in, oops, sorry about that. um, got a phone call. My Mac took over. So what we did was we partnered, and we're lucky because we are here in the Los Angeles area. We have all the major motion picture studios, we have all the major manufacturers. I came from that industry, so I reached out to my friends and the people I knew, and we set up industry field trips. So this photo is actually of my son, so you can see him working. That is an F65 Sony camera at the Sony lot in Culver City. They actually have what's called the Digital Motion Picture Center, and it is an education center at the lot. It's where they shot Gone with the Wind. They did The Wizard of Oz there. It was the old MGM studios. And what we do is we set up field trips. This was actually a photo from a field trip with our high school partners. They brought 40 students and they did a hands-on 2.5 hour full shoot. I made my son the cinematographer. I go, you better go sit on that camera. But the hands-on stuff, asking the questions, being in the studio, this is kind of an extreme example of it, but it's utilizing your contacts, utilizing the people you know, getting them out there. It could be as simple as maybe a graphic design house that you know someone who works at. Um, and it's not just this industry as well.
Actually, I'll also jump in. Just last week, we had one of our industry partners that we've been working with to try and build the bridges to their community college and K-12s invite the local high school who in the again, it's heating, ventilation, air conditioning. The high school literally is about a mile and a half from their facility, but they had never been there to visit. So we worked with their high school coordinator that does the field trips for career and technical education. She was able to put a busload of students together, and they went on a field trip to the local. They have an actual facility that they do a lot of their work within. Obviously, they didn't in the field with the technicians, but they got to see what an operations site for a heating, ventilation, air conditioning unit was. So 25 students got to realize that what they thought an industry sector only consisted of, that it really actually is integrated and it blends, and how they even use designers in that when they're doing all of their brochures and when they're doing their marketing pieces. So it's stuff that works regardless of industry, as Sean had stated earlier.
And so getting out there, working with your industry, and really braiding them throughout the process. They have money, which is always a big thing. They can give discounts. Almost any industry, they sometimes have entire systems set up to help support this, or they don't, but they're willing to. They need people to work as well. The industry, that's when it all comes down to is jobs here. I wanted to show a video real quick. It's about 3.5 minutes, but this was a project that we did with Valley High in Santa Ana with their digital media program. We did this entire program with them for a couple of years. What I would do is I would take their production crew out to all the major comic book conventions in Southern California. I would get them media credentials, and that was their field trips as well. They got to do everything. They went to Sony, they went to Red Camera, they also got to go to all these comic book conventions. So, these are 16, 17-year olds living the dream, basically. But I didn't want them just to walk in and go ooh and ah. I needed them to do something. So what we did was we went to each booth at these conventions and politely asked the people, do you want to be interviewed for a series called Voices of Creativity? And so this was basically a web series that not just that school, but all my other schools contributed to as well. So I'm going to click on this, and the link, I think, is there.
Hi, I am Lucas Khan, and I am in Long Beach Comic Con 2014 with Mr. Jim Cummings.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me out to play.
So what do you do?
Well, I'm a voice actor, and I do voices for a lot of cartoon characters and sing and say things like, in a world, stuff like that.
So would you give us another example of that?
Well, I suppose I could do some Winnie the Pooh for you, but I don't have any honey. But I can't do any bouncing because I left my stripes at home.
So how big is creativity to you?
Well, I think, creativity is everything to everybody, I think, because without creation, we wouldn't be here. But you knew that. But, I think the thing is you just can't be afraid, can't be timid, and don't be afraid to make mistakes and jump out there. And I had a friend of mine, Alan Koss, an actor. He said that when you're doing animated voices and things like that, it's so broad and it's so this and that, but it's the freedom to be a jerk or an a-hole is actually what he said, but I won't say that here. So, and if you do it enough and do it right, it seems to work out, I guess. So, it helps to be a little fearless, I think.
So what would you want to tell students and our audiences who are kind of afraid to show their creative side?
Well, I can tell you as far as being a voice actor goes, the way I used to do it, I was always in plays as a kid because people say, well, how do you start? How do you get into it? I was always in plays, and I'd be 10 years old, and instead of wanting to be the little prince, I wanted to be the monster or the ogre or the wizard because it was, a little more something to sink your teeth into. And I was always in those plays as a kid and in musicals, and I used to do impressions of my relatives who were not famous, but they were good impressions, so that was like a new character. And if you do an impression of somebody that everybody knows, very famous, and it doesn't sound like them at all, that's a new character too. Because you can just put them in your little mental Rolodex and go back and pull them out when you need it. That's how I did it, and I didn't know that it was supposed to be tough to break into, so I just blundered in. So that's one good way to do it. They say go hunting with a shotgun. So, they weren't waiting on me when I showed up, so jump in and do it. Everything is honey, everywhere I see. Everything is honey, and that's quite all right with me. Oh, it's a dangerous path I bounce, but I bounce it alone. Because the 100-acre wood needs the hero Pooh Bear, and I'm the only one.
So what are your current projects right now?
Well, let's see. There's Goldie and Little Bear, which is a continuation of the Little Red Riding Hood story. I play the big bad wolf. I play bad guys too. It's okay. Gnomeo and Juliet 2. I think the working title is Sherlock Gnomes. We're going to be starting on that in January. Elton John and David Furnish, his partner, that was their movie for Disney. New movie coming out with John Cleese and a bunch of other people, animated, called Animal Crackers. Another one that they don't have the title for yet, so I can tell you. I guess Star Wars Rebels is going to be coming to a TV near you. So I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but you'll just have to stay tuned.
We'll definitely check it out. Well, thank you for giving us the time to tell us your insight about creativity.
Well, thanks for coming out and hanging out.
Thank you.
And stay just as bouncy as you can. TTFN.
So that's an example of a project that we did. We braided it, we infused it through this entire process. We got industry involved, voice actor. He's actually a friend of mine too, so I knew him. So I shipped those kids over there and said, "Go talk to Jim." We ended up at that show, I think, doing about 60 interviews. Not all of them ended up becoming episodes. The students, then the project I would do with them in the classroom is they had to edit them and put them together and go get all the B-roll for them and put it, basically work in Premiere and get it all together. Actually, that was Final Cut, I think, is what they used on it. But Photoshop, all those things. And the students walk away with something that they can use in their portfolio as well. Lou, who was the announcer on that, she just graduated, and I believe she went to USC. She transferred out and went over there, and but she was fearless after about the first or second time. But it's building that confidence as well with the industry. But those field trips, getting people out and getting them out into the field and working, can produce stuff like this. So step 3 is one of the most important steps, and this is the one where logistics start really coming into play. Everything we've talked about is going to the school or taking them out on a field trip. We did, probably the best way to describe it is an in-house field trip. We, at Golden West College, used our different monies from our grants and other places, because that's always the first question is, where did you get the money to do this? We earmarked money that was coming in from all these different areas. And we would bring the high school students to our campus, and we called it a pathway day. We did these on Saturday as well, even though we were told, oh, no one will ever show up on a Saturday. Our best day, I think we had over 60 kids come from 2 of our local high schools. And what we did was we opened up our labs, we opened up all of our equipment. We had a television studio, we had a TV truck, well, our art departments, all of our workspaces. And we paid our instructors at Golden West to be there and to basically teach all day. And so these students would rotate in and out. A good example was we'd have live television broadcasts going on. So they did a newscast. Then we have one huge room of the new Wacom tablets. So we had one of our instructors who's a specialist in that actually do an entire thing on how to use the tablet, how to integrate it. Then we would do a Photoshop one because everyone loves Photoshop. And we did a video editing as well, and audio. We did have a recording studio too. And so the students in about every 45 minutes to an hour, and it got them onto the campus. It showcased our program and what we offer. And we're building, once again, that trust factor. Now they're comfortable with us. They're comfortable being on the campus as well. So anything to add on this one?
Well, and one of the other things that was really critical for the students that they enjoyed was at lunch we had both a student and or an industry panel that they actually got to talk to students in the program currently, students that had graduated from the program and went on into industry. And so we brought back our success stories to talk to the students about, because they were maybe only 4 or 5 years out of the seat themselves that the student was sitting in. And that, I think, was very had a long-term impact on the student, because again, it was someone, number one, in their age bracket that they could relate to directly, to say that, yes, I sat in your seat 4 years ago and now I'm working, XYZ job. And so the student panel at lunch, again, it was good, it was interactive, it allowed the students to visualize themselves in that their future in being successful.
And so the pathway day was a critical component. If you're not able to do it, another field trip can substitute for it or get equipment over to the high school. Sometimes logistics are difficult because of distances as well. We were very lucky that everyone's very close to us and it's not a long trip to get them there. But I understand sometimes, your next nearest school is 50 miles away or 100 miles away. Also, too, virtual, using Adobe Connect or Skype or any of those things, getting into the classroom that way. You can build a pathway day virtually if you have to. So it's not just the way we did it, but it's thinking about how you can promote your program and get those students engaged at the college or at your university. So step 4 is actually university. So building a full pathway from K through 12 to community college to four-year university, if I can talk today, to industry is what we do. I mean, when it's all said and done, that's really stripped down, getting people the job, starting them in K through 12 and walking through it. Now, not everyone is going to go to a 4-year school, but we always want to have that option on the table, and it is braided into what we do. We intertwine it. And what I did here in the Southern California area with our program at Golden West, I ended up writing a lot of our transfer guides. So these were agreements between our private schools, because our public schools have a different system in California for transfer, and I won't, it's called assist, and I'm not going to go into that, it's a whole other conversation. But we don't really have that component for private schools in California, and many of the big art schools, the creative schools, are private schools in California and across the nation and across the world. And in California, we treat out of state schools, public schools like Arizona State University or the University of Hawaii, they're pretty much private schools on our docket. So when we're talking about transferring a student out of California, it doesn't matter if it's private or public in Arizona, they're leaving California. So we're not getting any money for them here in California. And it's working with those schools to build the partnerships, taking our curriculum and what we do and matching it up so a student has a clear pathway to get their bachelor's degree. And because of those agreements and those relationships that I built, we would take our students out to schools in the area. So Concordia University, I actually worked for them, so I had a very good relationship. We would bring an entire group of high school students there that were in our digital media programs. But what was even more important, though, was we got them onto the college campus. And by luck, the last time we did it at Concordia, which is here in Irvine and Orange County, and it's a 4-year school, the class that we brought, we ran into 3 of their former classmates who were there on full scholarship playing soccer. And I think it really changed the outlook and what those students think they could do. Because a lot of them were like, "Oh, I can't ever afford to come here," and they go, "I can't come here. My parents don't have the money. I don't have the money. But then there's 3 of them, and actually they knew them because they had just transferred. So there's 3 of them standing there going, "Oh yeah, we're here." So it's those things that happen. They once again hands-on, getting them involved. Doing lunch in the cafeteria. What we think is sometimes is mundane. Like, oh yeah, lunch in the cafeteria. These kids have never done that. They've never been to a student common. They've never been involved with the other students. So it opens their eyes up not just to the academic side, but what's out there for them as well. If you can't do a partnered 4-year university visit or private school or art school or whatever it may be, another industry outreach event can substitute in here. Or if you can't do it, then this becomes a 4-step program. But it is key. And once again, it could be virtual. If you can't get them to the university, you got friends at Cambridge, have them do, or you got someone at Oxford, or you got someone in Milan, or someone here in California and you're in Pakistan. That's what Skype's for. I mean, that's what Google Hangouts are for. So it's not always about physically getting there, but it's giving them as much of an opportunity. And then step 5 here, the key component in building a strong pathway is to make sure your connections don't go away and you follow up with the projects and programs with the students. I have seen this happen where everyone's gun-ho and they start going and they get to step 3 and 4 and then 5 never happens. They never do the follow-up back to the classroom. They don't bring, "Hey, you guys are graduating. What can I do for you to get you into my program? What paperwork are you having trouble with? How can I connect the dots for those students in that high school to make sure that that bridge is complete to get those students into my program?" Now, one of the other things is, dual enrollment, we have articulation. I don't want to get into those, but getting high school students credit for college courses while they're still in high school is also a major push that's happening, not just in California, but across the United States. And so for those of you who deal in education here in the United States, and I'm going to kind of go on a limb, I think Canada does it as well. But it's the dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, articulation. There's a lot of terms that are out there, but it's getting credit for those students. And that opens up a whole other pathway here too. But this step 5 is where those relationships and those agreements can start really coming together. Because by this time, hopefully your K through 12 partners trust you. You've done all this work for them. You've done all these great things. now's the time to really start talking about what are our next steps? Where do we go from here? How do we build a much stronger pathway, a career pathway from all the way through? You have anything to add?
I think it's just important to recognize that while this effort started at the community college and we were reaching back, there's also a major national push for the K-12s to have a destination for their students. So it's in everyone's interest to build these relationships. And from an administrator's standpoint, um, that is an area that I think that administrators need to do a better job of, is actively engaging in this process. And sometimes they if you can as an educator step away from the desk and get your and ask your administrator to go with you so they can actually see and understand how this process is working. That's where the sustainability comes in. So even when the special monies, the grant monies, may go away, when they start to see this pipeline of students, it becomes then relevant and important to building a long-term strong program. And so it is very, very important for educators to work collaboratively with their and build the relationship off with their administrators, because that is one of the, I think too many administrators just sit behind their desk and they don't actively engage in the process. So I would encourage, if you're an educator, to go have that conversation with your administrators, invite them to come to things, because quite honestly, a lot of times they, I don't think that they're welcome, and or they just get so inundated with their other work. But sometimes that breath away from the desk really kind of gives them perspective that they may have lost over time. So that's my input from an administrator standpoint.
So it's a simple 5 step process, but there, like I said at the beginning, there are logistics, there are things, money, time, all those things you need to put into it. But one of the things I always say is it's marketing. When it all comes down to it, it's advertising. It's just like I would do in the normal industry, is building the relationships that are there, all those things, and actually too working with the relationships that you already have. We call it low hanging fruit. Pick it all. It's there. Grab it. Use it. Get things running. If you get I mean, I'm not going to say to do it this way, but if you think you can't do it because someone's going to say no, you might just want to do it anyway. It's always easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, and we're guilty of that sometimes. But these things would not happen if we didn't take that step and get outside our comfort zone as well. And I know we're about 15 minutes left here, and we want to leave some time for any questions that you had. And once again, too, I know we're going to have our contact information. If you have any very specific questions, we're more than happy to help. But industry engagement and outreach, this is kind of a giant pet peeve of mine, and I can go on and on and on about this and yell at you. But I hear it all the time. From K through 12, it's a little harder. They can't always get out of the classroom. But at my university and college level, I hear instructors go, well, I don't know anyone in that industry, or how do we get industry engaged? How do I do it? I don't have time to do it. And as industries, and I say this across, we have trade shows. That's what trade shows are for. I live in diet conventions. This week I'm going to the National Association of Broadcasters. Then I have another one in Sacramento, and then I'm going to another one the week after. I get more work done at these. I make my connections. People ask me, well, how do you know the Canon, the camera people? I walked into their booth and introduced myself and worked the booth. I mean, I call it that. I work the floor. I go in, and anyone is a target for me in that building. And it's not just, and the picture you see here is actually NAB last year. I stole the picture from the site, and I wanted to throw it in there because look at all of the logos. Adobe, that's the big Adobe booth at this thing. Then we've got Matrox over here. They're the ones, Aja, they're the camera manufacturer. You got a green screen. This is just one tiny slice of this convention. We're talking about 90,000 people, the entire Las Vegas Convention Center. I do Comic-Con. You saw in my picture. I do all the comic book conventions. I was at the Game Developer Conference. I ended up talking about global trade at that more than anything else. Not about game development, but global trade. So when you look at it, get outside your comfort zone. I know it's difficult, but a lot of us are teachers. We get in front of the classroom. we have personas. I have my convention persona. I have my on stage persona. And I do that though because in the end, those connections are what's gonna make my entire project, all those 5 steps, successful in the end. And it's building that last 3 feet of the bridge. We're good at building bridges as educators, but we always forget that last 3 feet, which is connecting the industry, connecting the students to those jobs. And we have the opportunities out there, even if it's just the cardboard convention that you go to. And I joke about that, but I went to the cardboard convention in Long Beach kind of by accident because it was next door to another one. And I walked in, and when I looked at the room, I said, all the graphics and printing on these packaging, who's doing it? Or how are they shipping it? Where is it going through the free trade zones in Los Angeles? Because we were here in LA. Where is it coming from? Where's the paper mills? Who's doing the cutting and the growing in that? Where's the agriculture part of it? There's water management in this as well. So it's not always what's in front of you. You need to kind of take a step back and take the blinders off and go, where can I fit into this industry no matter what it is? And how can I make those connections and bring them to the classroom? When I walk into a booth, like if I walked into that Matrox booth right back here, first thing I would ask is, do you have an education rep or do you have someone who does that in your company? And are they here right now? If not, can I get your card? Can I make the connection? The other thing I'm going to say too, follow up with everyone. Collect their cards, use Evernote if you have to. That's what I use, and take a picture, and it sends a nice email back to them. I can't even tell you where my career has gone because I email people back and just say, hey, it was great to meet you at the NAB show. This is what I do. Is there anything I can do, or is there anything in your company that can help us at a state level? And that's how relationships start. How you make friends. So now I know we're cutting close on time here. We'll jump over and do questions and comments once I turn this off. Our next 2 webinars are here. So May 19th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to do integrating third-party certification into your career pathway. We're going to talk about the Adobe Certified Associate exams and how that worked into our 5-step program as well. It was a huge component. I didn't want to get into it today because that's an entire hour and a half in its own, but we'll actually go through how we did it, how we funded it, how it became a marketing piece, as really a huge part of our marketing, and also how we reached out in our county and statewide to become the leader in that. And then on June 14th is our career pathway alignment with WIOA. A little bit earlier I talked about that, but do a Google search for WIOA. It is a federal program here in the United States that affects everyone. And Judy Mortrud is going to be joining us on that one. She's the director at the Center of Law and Social Policy in Washington, D.C., better known as CLASP. And we'll talk about that kind of as a much broader level, and then we'll work our way down to a local level and how it would affect your school program. And this one would be good, honestly, for anybody, even though it is federal United States law. A lot of it is, I'll be honest, common sense and how to apply those things throughout your program. And a few resources here. We'll put out the link for this so you can come back and click on it, but we had the link for Doing What Matters. This is our website, careerpathwaysca.com, and I say we as the TAPS. This is where we put all of our resources. And then if you want to watch my videos or use them in your classrooms, mylastname.com, gloomis.com, all my stuff is there as well. All the podcasts I do and everything else. And here's our contact information. I'll leave that up for a second. We can also put this in. I'm going to copy it and throw it in the chat just in case anyone needs it. I'm going to switch back to Remy here.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Angela. It's I think some of the takeaways that we have here watching from Adobe as a team, just thinking about how I think that last piece really resonated with us, where you were saying, how do we reach out, giving advice of how educators can really reach out to make that connection. I like the phrase you used, the last 3 feet. I think industry is hungry to talk with teachers, talk with the academy, really help to guide and steer and influence some of the things that are going on in the classroom, and also hear about what the students are doing. And your presentation really highlighted, I think, for all of us, what some actions we can do from our side of the table to really make sure that we're building the relationships to be able to create these career pathways. Um, Sean, Angela, I had a question for you regarding uh, outreach to industry, or also just really, I think it sounds like bringing the community into the classroom. And I wondered if you have advice on whether that should be online or in person. You talked about field trips as well. Can you just kind of talk about what that looks like in practice? How would somebody go about doing that, or suggestions for how they should implement that into their year-long or semester-long curriculum?
Well, I'll start and then I'll let Sean kind of bring it home. But I personally am much better relationship wise. I think begins as much as you can be face to face. But given technology and we're dealing with a new generation of students who are much more technologically savvy and are more used to dealing with technology, I think you do whatever you have the capability of doing. For us in a larger metropolitan area, getting them into the classroom physically isn't as hard as say maybe a rural school. Actually, getting someone that maybe into a particular industry, and so technology then becomes that kind of that stopgap. So I think that it's you do whatever you have the capacity to do to build the relationship. Um, and again, that's just me personally. I think that people, and what I found from the administrative standpoint, one of the reasons why I actually went into the classroom with the faculty was because I needed to see the students. I needed to see the gleam in their eye that the work that the faculty that I was overseeing, that when they did a little bit extra, I got to see the magnitude of how the impact really it was 10 times greater than if I would read it on the report. So I think it's important to, as much as you can, engage face to face. But again, given a new generation of students and they're used to technology, you do what you can.
And I agree with it. I like the face to face. Even our meetings we're trying to do statewide now more face to face because things do get done quicker. You know, I love the webinars, but we all get distracted, and with students, they get distracted very quickly as well. So at least having the person there, if you can get them into the classroom, is usually key. And it goes back to projects as well. The project based learning that is much more difficult to do online. I teach online. Trust me, I know it's just doing groups is a nightmare. Through your online learning systems and stuff and especially if you have an industry partner that's going to do a project with them. It's not impossible. Sometimes it's the only way we can do it, but I still prefer that in person to person. And you talked also too about, or you asked about industry connections. I'm a firm believer in you've got to go out and be in person. The phone calls are nice. I get people who call me all the time, or I call people, but at least once again, it goes back to our going to conventions and being in person and pressing the flesh and understanding that those people will remember you. There's so much more that happens that I think we took for granted before the digital world. It was just the way it was. And now, with all of our nice toys and ways to get a hold of people, it's using those as well. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all those things are great ways to network, but in the end, that personal, all of my major relationships that I have with industry are face to face personal ones. They may have started with the digital, but at some point I had to get in front of them. And that makes a huge difference.
And I just want one other thought on that is, the work that Sean and I are doing across the state of California, as he said earlier, there's two of us in the state of California doing this work, connecting the dots on a statewide level. And to reach out to 113 college, 78 community college districts, and thousands of high school districts and partnerships. But the reason why I think we've been successful thus far is because we do this work on the road. We go when if someone invites us to come see them, we figure out a way to build an interaction and an engagement at what we try to utilize the travel that's already planned to meet with people as we can. But we've just found that one of the reasons why we've garnered some of the respect and also made some of the progress that we've made is because we believe in building relationship as a solution, not as the option.
Well, I have to say, there's a big invitation to the Northeast. So if you ever find yourself in Boston or New York, I'd love to meet with both of you. So thank you again, Sean. Thank you, Angela, for your time today. Incredibly insightful and educational. And I look forward to our next two sessions coming up. One on May 19th that Sean presented talking about certification and career pathways, specifically looking at the Adobe Certified Associate Program through Certiport and Adobe, as well as June 14th, looking at career pathway alignment. How does this affect my school program? And I know specifically we've discussed looking at WIOA. Is that right? Am I pronouncing that
Yes.
correct, Sean? Okay,
Yep, that is correct.
great. Well, thank you again, both of you, very much for today's session. And we will be putting this up and sending it out to all of those who could attend and who could not. Thank you again, and look forward to talking with you next month.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who came.
Yes, thank you very much. We look forward to, and again, any questions, we are very responsive. So you have the emails, and yes, you will definitely hear back from us.
All right. Bye, everyone.